Okay. So that's the boss right there. Okay, he's pretty big, pretty dangerous, very big, very dangerous. Okay, and then he does this, right? Watch. Just a second. Right here.
Long may you reign over your empire of ash.
300 shit right there.
Look at this. Congratulations, Your Majesty. The kingdom is ours.
That dude's like, fuck. So that's the boss. Okay, as you can see, he's really big. And let's see how big he's gonna be in game.
Hello and welcome back to Fat Boss TV. Today we're looking at the penultimate boss in Uldir, which is Mythrax the Unraveler.
No, he was
BFA
way
beta
bigger in the
testing.
cinematic.
So this encounter rotates between two phases every 25.
He got nerfed, man. Look how small he is now. Whatever, it's fine. Okay, let's start.
% health until the boss is finally killed. The main theme of the encounter is to dodge as many abilities as possible, primarily because of the annihilation stacks.
Okay.
Each time you're hit by a spell, you'll gain a different amount of stacks, depending on what ability hit you.
Ooh.
Each stack reduces your maximum health pool by 1%. The majority of spells you can avoid, however, some you cannot. This acts as a pseudo-enrage, as eventually you'll die simply to having too small of a health pool.
Oh my
These stacks,
god.
however, can be removed one by one using the existence fragments. Every time you gain annihilation stacks, these fragments will spawn around you, typically for half the amount of stacks you gained. So if you was to gain 8 stacks from being hit by an ability, you'll spawn 4 or so fragments. Each fragment, while we were testing, removed only a single stack, but the Dungeon Journal was updated recently, and it does suggest that they're playing with the idea of removing 2 stacks for live. Anyway, with all of that explained, let's jump into phase 1 and see what we need to do.
Now there is 2 different abilities for the tanks to watch out for. Essence Shit is a 30-yard cone that deals a large amount of damage, applies 16 annihilation stacks, and applies a debuff that prevents you from spawning any fragments for 15 seconds.
Oh, so you have to swap.
Now, although this ability isn't cast frequently enough to stack on a single tank, you still do have to tank swap.
You have to swap, yeah, there it is.
This is because we found the tanks need to go and remove their annihilation stacks after every hit,
then
by running around the room and collecting fragments that the raid has spawned. You could technically solo tank this fight, but it would require you to run all over the room to collect orbs, which will force the boss to move about all over the place, which isn't particularly good for DPS.
Okay.
They have, however, since the first test, changed the debuff to be 25 seconds long rather than 15 seconds long. This will definitely force you to 2-tank the boss if they keep the timers the same.
Okay.
The other ability for the tanks is Massive Claw, which for some reason isn't listed in the Dungeon Journal. This is just a cast that deals a shit ton of damage to the tank, and as a result it is a good idea to have a cooldown up for each time this ability comes in. However, providing the tanks do a good enough job at keeping their annihilation stacks as low as possible, this ability didn't seem to be too much of an issue. For the raid to deal with is 3 abilities. First off is Oblivion Sphere. These orbs spawn on random players, and for us they even spawned on the tanks. These orbs charm all players within 5 yards of them instantly as they spawn. Whilst charmed, you take a small amount of ticking damage, but also gain 1 stack of annihilation per tick. Killing the orb
so you need to kill those
charm
immediately.
effect from players. You can, however, knock charmed players away from the orbs, which will completely remove the charm effect. We decided to have the raid, including the melee, spread more than 5 yards apart from one another, so only 2 people were hit by the orb's charm, and simply just rotated knockbacks to get those people out. Second up is the Imminent Ruin. This debuff is applied to 2 players, and it deals ticking damage over 12 seconds, whilst also progressively slowing that target. Once the debuff expires, it will deal drop-off damage to all players within 45 yards, and it will also apply 4 stacks of annihilation to anyone within 12 yards. So the key to this debuff is just to react as fast as you can and get far away from the raid. We had each debuff player run to opposite sides of the room, and this seemed to work well. Lastly, in phase 1, the raid needs to watch out for the Obliteration Wave.
That's right.
This ability is cast towards a random player,
Very
and when the cast is finished, a large wave will fire off in that direction. Although the wave deals very little damage, it does apply 8 annihilation stacks. Now ideally you want to avoid this, however if the raid has been good with the Imminent Ruin debuffs, And if you've killed the spheres off quick enough, there isn't always going to be enough fragments for your tanks to use. We opted to have certain players get hit by this wave, and towards the end of the fight, we even had large amounts of the raid get hit, so we spawned an absolute ton of fragments for the tanks to use, so they could consistently have their annihilation stacks low. It is something that you do, however, need to find a balance for, because if you have too much of the raid with extremely high stacks of annihilation, then you're going to have issues during phase 2.
So once you've got the boss to 75% health, he'll move into the middle of the room and begin to take 99% less damage.
99.
Also, anyone that moves too close to the boss will be knocked back. The moment the phase begins, the boss will cast Zolzyak's Awakening. This spawns Oblivion Spheres and also deals damage to the entire raid, also giving 5 stacks of Annihilation. From this point onwards, he'll cast 2 different abilities throughout the phase. Visions of Madness will spawn adds on top of 5 random players. These adds simply just spam cast Mind Flay. This deals a huge amount of damage and also slows their target. It's listed as an interruptible spell in the dungeon journal, but we found out that only stuns work while testing. We had DPS swap to these adds immediately as they didn't have much health, and they did do a lot of damage. The other ability to watch out for is the Obliteration Beam. This Ruiner type beam didn't work while we were testing, but it is listed as a deadly ability, and like all other beams we've seen in the past, no doubt when this one is working it will probably one-shot you. Right now it does, however, have the description of the Oblivion Spheres in the Dungeon Journal, so perhaps it's supposed to spawn orbs on players that are hit. We don't really know. One thing to definitely watch out for this beam is that the cast time of it is particularly short, so you don't have too much time to react. But providing you keep a close eye on the boss, it shouldn't be too difficult to dodge, especially with boss mods. Now the last thing to talk about in this phase is the 2 Naraki Destroyers. These guys hit the tanks extremely hard and also have an Essence Shear. They also had an Interruptible Fear, but this has since been removed from the Dungeon Journal and been replaced by a Void Volley, a cast that just deals damage to the entire raid. In the Dungeon Journal, it's also listed that they take 80% less damage if they're tanked too close to each other, but that wasn't active for us, so we could just stack them up and cleave them down. But to summarize this phase for live servers, you'll want to spread the adds apart so the critical mass 80% damage reduction isn't active. You'll want to out-heal the volley, whilst you also interrupt and stun the Mind Flay visions, whilst dodging the beam that will probably one-shot you. After so long in this phase, the boss will reactivate and the fight will go back into phase 1. You'll want to make sure that all the adds are dead before you transition back into phase 1, or you're probably going to have quite a big mess to deal with. From this point onwards, the raid damage will begin to feel more spiky on players as people start to gain more annihilation stacks, especially if you save the majority of the fragments for the tanks. We found that anything over, say, 50 to 60 stacks pretty much meant that that player was very close to dying going into phase 2 when the boss does his initial burst. And looking at the changes they made to the adds with the introduction of the Void Volley, it's probably going to be even worse. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how you need to manage those annihilation stacks and what the highest amount you can have before you just flat out die during phase 2. But that's the encounter. What do we think?
So changes to these encounters are coming much faster than we thought. This boss was tested less than a week ago of the date of this video being made, and they've already made significant changes in the Dungeon Journal. So it's hard to kind of give solid feedback as they've already decided to redesign certain aspects of the boss. But we can, however, for the fun of it, just talk about our time with the boss. So phase 1 is pretty relaxed once you've got the hang of it, but it can go wrong really, really fast. And the main reason for that is just the orbs. Like, they have a fair amount of health, so as a result, you're kind of forced to rely on knockbacks to save the players from being charmed and getting a fair amount of stacks. That's fine when you've got like a large raid size as we had, especially if you've got a shit ton of knockbacks from like druids and whatever, but we can definitely see this being an issue if you've got a smaller raid size. So hopefully it's tuned in such a way that maybe only 1 orb spawns, or maybe just make it so the orbs have very little health so they...
There's going to be like a threshold where if you have like 12 people, 1 spawns. If you have 13, 2 spawn. That's probably what's going to happen. That's what happens every single fucking time. This seems pretty simple. So basically he starts out and this ball management thing, we're probably going to wipe on this boss. I'm going to say that right now. We're probably going to wipe on this guy because people are not going to know how to manage their balls. So you just separate the adds, kill the adds, interrupt the adds, and get the balls, especially if you're a tank. We'll 3-tank it just to make sure that if case a tank dies, we have an extra backup tank, and that's the shear that he does. Doesn't really matter even where you move them. You have to knock people out of the balls. Somebody in chat said if you knock somebody out of the balls, then it does massive damage. They fixed that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess we'll find out. You just kill them either way. It's not a big deal. Yeah. 3-tank? Well, 3-tank works, right? That's why I do it. Is that it works. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, this is the last one. The big dick himself. Huun.
Hello guys, and welcome.
The big dick himself. All right.
Welcome back to Fabulous TV. Today we're covering the final boss in Uldir, which is huun.
Yes, this massive slug has 3 phases, and whilst testing, we were only able to see 2 of them. We held back making this video as we was expecting more testing to be done, perhaps even just a normal mode test, but it doesn't appear that's on the horizon anytime soon. Now this, of course, is footage from the BFA beta, meaning that the boss...
Look at that mouth, dude. Watch.
On the horizon anytime soon. Now this, of course, is footage from the BFA...
Look at that, dude. Holy shit. So it looks like huun is like a gigantic, demonic, undead, or not undead, an old god, uncircumcised cock. That's basically what he is, okay?
Beta, meaning that the boss could change before hitting live servers, and chances are that it will in some small way. The damage, especially in Phase 2, felt super overtuned, and it did prevent us from getting much further into the fight. Okay. We will, however, discuss the last phase and give you our thoughts on how it will play out later in the video, as well as our feedback. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the encounter.
Ooh, he's dead.
So the fight space consists of this large arena area where primarily you'll be dealing with ads during Phase 1 and the boss from Phase 2 onwards.
Oh,
in the bottom left and right hand side of the room, however, there are ramps that will grant you access to paths that head towards a structure at the top of the room.
This is complicated.
The boss hides within this structure during Phase 1 and is only released once the raid has deposited 3 power matrices into it. The power matrix originally spawns on the left hand side and will alternate with the right. When you pick it up, you'll become gradually slow to the point where you're rooted. You can use your extra action button to throw it to a new player. If they do not catch it by standing in the landing zone, it'll instead despawn and you'll have to wait for a new one to spawn.
Oh, shit.
This is really bad. It's important that you get 3 of these into the structure at the top of the path as soon as possible to trigger Phase 2.
Okay.
Now when you pick up the Matrix, it will also apply a debuff that prevents you from picking it up again for 5 minutes. However, it doesn't prevent you from catching it. So for the first player to initially pick it up has to be different each time. However, the people helping move it down the path and eventually depositing it can be the same every single time. Now, as the slow applied by the power matrix stacks very quickly and cannot be removed or negated until you've thrown it, you need a couple of guys along the path so you can fire it towards each other to safely deposit it. We use mages at first using...
Look at that warrior. Watch this. So you throw it at the warrior.
Now, as the slow applied by the power matrix stacks very quickly...
He takes the gate.
And cannot be removed or negated. And
he does the first charge.
Till you've thrown it. You'll need a couple of guys...
There it is. He's going to do a second charge.
So you can fire it towards each other.
And he does a heroic leap. And he turns it in right there, dude. What a literal god, man. Holy shit.
You deposit it. We use mages at first using double blinks, and that worked kind of well. However, they're not the best by any means. Warriors using Warlock Gateway, double charge, and leap could solo the entire path and deposit it before even being rooted. Mars could do the exact same thing with Chi Torpedo and Transcendence, again with a gateway, and Demon Hunters could also do the job using leaps and dashes. We found that having a single player do the job is definitely a better option than a group of players doing it, and it will definitely be a massive factor in compositions, especially for Mythic. The main reason being, on Mythic, both sides need to be done at the exact same time, and also be deposited within a small time frame of each other.
Now,
as you probably noticed, these paths are coated in Sys. They slow and deal damage to any players within their animation. The slow can be countered by using effects like Blessing of Freedom, however dealing damage to these Sys will also reduce the ground effect size, allowing people to get through without being slowed at all. However, if you are a warrior, a monk or a demon hunter, these Sys become pretty much irrelevant. Whilst up on this platform you do take unavoidable ticking damage, it doesn't deal too much damage, but it just reinforces the idea of getting it done as soon as possible. But that's it for the platforms. Drop the Matrix into the top of the path 3 times, and Phase 2 will start. We do, however, need to cover what's going on down in the arena below.
So the boss in this phase is just chilling close to where the matrices are being deposited. During this time, he'll constantly heal himself, so it's absolutely pointless damaging him. To watch out for is his explosive corruption. The boss will apply this debuff pretty frequently to a random player, and when this debuff times out 5 seconds later, that player will leave a patch on the ground and fire orbs in all directions. If a player stands in the patch or is hit by one of these orbs, they'll then get the explosive corruption. So if the first guy to get the explosive corruption drops it in the middle of the raid, it's going to get bad fast, with half of your raids suddenly getting the debuff and spawning patches and orbs themselves 5 seconds later. We just found it's best to get the explosive corruption debuff as far away from the raid as possible, ideally against the wall, just to give as much reaction time as possible for people to dodge the orbs. Now, aside from the debuff, the boss will be spawning 3 different types of ads. Blight Spreader Tendril Spam Cast Decaying Eruption. This interruptible cast deals a nasty burst of damage to the raid. Once the tendrils run out of energy, they'll burrow to another location in the room.
Okay.
We typically just interrupted these guys and nuked them down first.
Okay.
Cyclopean Terrors cast an interruptible Mind Flay. This deals damage over 15 seconds to a random player, and it can get pretty nasty. We did our best to keep these guys interrupted.
This is just phase 1, guys.
Down. And as for the last ad, this is the Dark Young. These guys need to be tanked as they have a large physical damage hit, but also importantly, they have to be positioned correctly because of the Dark Bargain. This ability is cast every time the Dark Young reach 100% energy. It will buff all mobs and players within the circle around them, with increased healing and damage done by 25% for 30 seconds, and it also increases the damage you take by 25%. By placing the Dark Young on top of Blight Spreader tendrils, it simply allows the DPS to kill them off much quicker, as they'll be taking additional damage.
That's badass.
We even deliberately saved the Dark Young so that the buff could be reused on new sets of tendrils, as we valued this buff so highly. You do, however, need to be careful, because if you go for another stack of the debuff when Dark Bargain is cast, you will become mind controlled and the raid will have to kill you off. So you can only have one stack of Dark Bargain at any given time. But that's it for phase 1, you just need to...
Here's how they're going to handle that with LFR. They're just going to make it to where he dies in 3 seconds, so he never even casts it twice. Simple. Problem solved.
Keep on top of the ads, interrupt all their casts, make use of the Dark Bargain. Meanwhile, the guys on the upper platforms need to deposit 3 of the power matrices into the re-origination drive. Once that's done, a re-origination blast will happen. This deals huge damage to all mobs and players every 5 seconds for 25 seconds, and this will also stun and apply a 100% damage taken increase to all of the mobs, including the boss when he's active.
Oh, wow.
It's at this point that you want to stack up, use some healing cooldowns to counteract the damage, and begin to kill off any remaining mobs, although the damage from the blast itself should finish them off pretty quickly.
That's a lot of damage.
Will then reveal himself, and it's at this point where it kind of fell to pieces. The boss absolutely destroys the tanks with Corrupting Bite. This is a stacking buff that increases the damage on his melee attacks, and it only resets when a new tank taunts. While testing, we found if this buff was to go above 5 stacks, the tanks would get absolutely destroyed without cooldowns. We even used 3 tanks to try and keep the stack as low as possible.
Good idea.
As well as resorting to kiting the boss when cooldowns were spent.
Holy
Just keep in mind
shit.
it's extremely unlikely you'll need to do this on live servers, but at what stack you'll need to taunt, we simply don't know right now. A solid guess would probably be anywhere between 4 and 6 stacks. To add to the extreme damage the tanks are gaining from the bite is also the Wave of Corruption. This wave is sent directly from the boss all across the room. It deals moderate damage that splashes 5 yards from every single player, so everyone must remain spread to prevent people from getting comboed. Additionally, it will also apply a dot, and this dot stacks. After the wave has been sent out twice, a random player in your raid will be hit by Blood Feast. This is a 10-second debuff that roots the target. Before the debuff times out, a third wave will go across the room. It's at this point after the third wave, everyone will then want to go and stack on the rooted player. When the debuff times out, everyone within the targeting circle will have their dot removed. However, an ad will now spawn on that location that has 5% damage and health increase for each player that stood within the circle to remove their debuff. This ad is a complete pain as it constantly deals raid-wide damage as well as interrupting people for 3 seconds each time he casts mind-numbing chatter.
Holy shit.
You got to nuke this guy down as fast as you possibly can. And whilst all of this is still going on, you'll still have explosive corruption to deal with. Aside from that, you'll also need people running the power matrix orbs. We believe that the idea is that when the ad spawns from the Blood Feast, you should be looking at having your third power matrix deposited very soon so you can trigger a blast immediately so that the ad and the boss, which are now stunned for 25 seconds, can just be stunned as you stack and use healing.
You have to do that too?
We didn't get to see that, but looking at timers, it should line up that way if you're fast on the platforms. And you rinse and repeat that until you get the boss to around 25% health, and that's when phase 3 begins.
So looking at the dungeon journal, this does seem to be a burn phase. The re-origination drives will no longer be active, so you don't need to do the platforms anymore. And then the ceiling will begin to collapse, creating large circles that deal massive fall-off damage. You just probably want to run away from those. Additionally, malignant growths will spawn around the room, dealing seemingly lethal damage to anyone within 8 yards. We assume there should just be a bunch of basically bad zones. Move out of those bad zones,
swirly
otherwise
boys.
you're gonna die. The raid also needs to turn away from the boss in a Yogg-Saron style fashion when Gaze of Gahun is cast, otherwise you are going to be feared for 6 seconds. Aside from that, the boss will continue to destroy the tanks with Corrupting Bite, and the raid will continue to need to move away with the Explosive Corruption debuffs. Worst of all is that the Wave of Corruption still exists, but the ability to drop your stacks via Blood Feast doesn't anymore, hence why it's a burn phase. You've got to kill the boss before the putrid blood dot stacks from the wave become unhealable. And that's it. What a fight.
Yeah, so let's talk feedback. I think it's a great boss. I think we both agree on that. It's just a massive shame
that's a lot of stuff you have
that
to
we
do,
didn't get an opportunity to actually see those
like,
Phase 3 mechanics. I think the running of the power matrix in Phase 1 and Phase 2 is an awesome idea, but it does definitely cater to some classes over others, and it might be an issue for some guilds that don't have the ability to bring all these particularly good classes for it. And that's going to be more prevalent on Mythic, where both sides, of course, need to be done simultaneously.
I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah. As for the whole 5-minute debuff you get, it, of course, encourages a rotation, so everyone does the job. But it's a bit odd that someone can have the debuff, but still catch the orb.
Yeah.
So you can use the same person every single time, but simply have a new person each time pick up the orb and throw it to that designated person to go and run it down to the
that's
drive
so
in the middle.
OP, dude.
Also, the fact that that's even possible isn't clear at all.
We had no idea.
Yeah, it was only after like reviewing the footage that we realized that that actually happened at one point. And also, we spoke to a couple of friends, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we were doing that all the time."
Yeah, well, we had like a whole group of people on the left-hand side, so like 3 people on the
I'll look
left-hand
for
side
another
of the
video of
first
this
set,
boss.
then another set of people did it on the right side, and then a new set of people did it on the left, so that's already 9 people involved.
Yep.
When really you could just have one warrior on one side, one monk on the other, and then just send a unique person each time to throw the orb and get it going.
Yeah.
So that might actually be a better way of doing it, though, just because of smaller raid sizes. If you do have a smaller raid size, say you only have 10 people, and you need at least 2 people per orb, then someone's going to have to do it twice, because otherwise you're not going to have enough of these drives to go through. Because it looks like you're going to probably want to use it 2 or 3 times at least during Phase 2.
The drive mechanic is really cool.
You don't want to send the tanks
up
there either, because, you know, the tanks are doing stuff downstairs. But they could definitely improve, like, how that's portrayed to people. Like, we had no idea. I've been reading the Dungeon Journal since it came out, and I kind of get a gist of
Trade? Trade what? Oh! Do I have these? Wait a second. Oh my god. Do I have this one? What? Oh, Icy Bolts. Thank you so much. Oh my god. Thank you, Icy Bolts. Wow. Oh my god. Thank you, man. Your local BFA pet dealer here. Well, I really appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Oh my god. Wow.
Mechanics work from it. That tooltip's awful. It really doesn't. Like, you can't interact with Power Matrix.
But ultimately, it could also be a bug.
It could be a bug as well.
The way we were doing it is actually intended. We don't know. But moving on to just talking about Phase 1, I think the pacing of the ads was pretty good. I think they actually got that right. There was a small moment right at the start where you get your very first Dark Young, and you can just kill him off, and then you have to wait like 5 seconds before ads spawn. But then we realized it's actually better to leave that Dark Young alive, so you can reuse his Dark Bargain as soon as the next set of ads spawn. You can instantly make it so they take 25% more damage.
Smart.
So that was kind of cool. But apart from that, I think the pacing of the ad spawning was actually pretty good. Of course, Phase 2 was overtuned as hell.
Yeah, nuts overtuning. I have no idea why it even got to testing and that sort of stuff.
By the way, I have no fucking idea why that's happening. I really don't know why that's happening. I don't know if it's my... I have no idea. No clue. Sound card? Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know.
Hey, it was a bit embarrassing, actually, going there.
But potentially, although extremely unlikely, it might not be overtuned.
Oh, yeah, well, this whole hide upstairs strat.
Yeah, so we did have the idea of putting the entire raid, minus the tanks and the majority of the healers, to actually stay up on the upper platforms during Phase 2, which means the boss is taking absolutely no damage at all. And then that entire group of people can just run the power matrices, and once they've done 3, they can then drop down because the boss is stunned and not doing any abilities, and you can just nuke him.
Yeah, because while you're upstairs, you don't get hit by the wave.
No, the wave doesn't hit you upstairs.
They'll have to hotfix that. There's no way that's intentional, because there are going to be guilds that have everyone up there, and they have a really good timer for the wave, and you literally just lost it.
Everybody runs up there.
In, and then quickly run back down. And that just means don't bring melee to the fight. Those sort of things on Mythic are going to be a big deal.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah, the damage was
I mean, in theory, that strategy does work.
No. But, I don't like that.
Even if you was to go with like a perfect comp, it's still going to make the enrage on the fight, if that is the intended strat, like 30 minutes long. It's going to take so long to kill the boss.
Jesus
so I don't think that that's going to be a likely case.
This
also,
boss
to add
is
to that sort of strategy, there are waves in Phase 3, and by the sounds of it, you don't actually have access to the paths at the top. So you are going to get hit by the waves.
Yeah.
So unless the waves in phase 3, they decide to make them do far less damage or come in far less frequently.
Yeah, no, that's
I don't think that's going to be the intended strategy during phase 2. And also, we should probably mention, which we haven't mentioned yet, the boss's model.
It's so good.
It looks like me when I've just got out of the shower.
Oh, that's disgusting. Oh, nice one.
It's like the first wormy, slug-looking dude we've had since AQ40.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
No, he's a very cool-looking boss. It's actually pretty terrifying tanking him because he's just so big. And generally, the whole room, like, kind of, it's very well, you know, it does feel like you're in this slimy sort of cave, and you've got all the cysts upstairs, and yeah, it's just a generally really nice-looking end room. A little bit dark.
Let me see if they have another Cahoon video.
There you go, just tell me brightness, and it's an awesome.
I want to test this out and see what it's like.
Xavius.
This boss is
aside
insane.
from that, it's kind of difficult to comment further on the encounter, really, until we sort of see a more polished and well-tuned version.
Yeah.
Which we hope they do before BFA is released in August.
So I guess that kind of dispels any concerns that Cahoon is going to be another repeat of Xavius. Holy shit. There goes a sight from my soul. There goes a sight.